And welcome back to Share Truth Apply Scripture. I'm Jordan Shambly, joined by Wesley Wildman and Cedra Sarton. And last segment we left off, Wesley couldn't remember a passage of Scripture reference. So which
he actually did remember it
you
correctly.
did remember it, and then you forgot.
Second
Yeah.
guessed myself. I got pressured and I didn't handle it well.
Right.
I saw the time clicking down and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
But it's 1 Corinthians 12. That's your homework. Go read 1 Corinthians chapter 12. It talks about the function and the responsibility of the church and how there's different parts and they serve different things, and how it's important that we recognize that, so that that can be stretched in my opinion as far as different types of ministries. And so are stretched or it can be viewed as different types of ministry too. So because one ministry is serving in a way that helps the homeless, one ministry is serving in a way that helps those that are being trafficked, one helps in a way that helps those that are affected by natural disasters, another ministry can help in a way that helps shape our culture.
Yeah.
And so we want to understand those different things, and whichever one we find ourselves serving in, we always want to remember and appreciate and pray for those that are serving in different ways than we are. That was the point.
Good.
And so go check out 1 Corinthians 12. That's your reading lesson.
1 Corinthians 12, if you're ever sitting in church and you're wondering, what am I supposed to be doing? It's in the Bible, and you just need to read it. 1 Corinthians 12 will give you a good idea of what you might need to be doing. We're going to talk about a very specific issue in the church. It's not a very popular topic with a lot of Christians. It might be uncomfortable for some, but the topic of tithing is a command in the Bible to give a tithe to the church that you're attending to. And I think there's a lot of confusion around this. I think a lot of times, especially in our culture, because we tend to idolize money, and this can creep in a very subconscious way, even with Christians, where we see money and we see groceries or a bill being paid, and we kind of bristle at the thought of God's telling me to give this away, and I can understand that. I mean, I've felt that way before, and it is a real issue, but I think it's an issue, and maybe especially for our generation too, for us to deal with. Some people think that why should we tithe? I mean, isn't that something that the Old Testament they were supposed to do in the Old Testament? The Hebrews were supposed to give their sacrifices to the temple. I mean, we're not doing that anymore. Is it the same thing? There's a lot of confusion around the issue, so that's what we're going to talk about. So let's talk about the importance of it. So what is tithing? Is it a punishment? Are we paying for being such horrible sinners and throwing our money in the plate because we're supposed to be punished, or is it something else?
Well, you've been blessed by God with money, or I've been blessed with this job. Well, that means that I should do my part for my church that I attend. I should give a part of that. God blessed me with that. He didn't have to. It's His already. He can take it at any time. He's choosing to allow me to give this bit of what I have instead of taking all of it. I can give part of it.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting too that there is a very specific use for the tithe too, and Paul went to this, and Wesley, you're my reference man, but Paul spoke about how the tithe goes to the pastors and the leaders of the church. So
in 1 Corinthians, same. He talks a lot about he talks about a lot about church membership, our role, things like that, and in the whole book of 1 Corinthians.
Right.
And it talks about, it says, "Don't muzzle the ox that treads the field," and that's an Old Testament reference, meaning that these people are working unto the Lord. They shouldn't be deprived of financially providing for their family. The shelter, the food, the bare essentials. That shouldn't be deprived because they're taking time away when this is what they're doing.
Right.
There's people that are full time, is what you say, full time in ministry, and they make their living from it as well as serving the Lord. And there's those people that serve and volunteer as well. You got two different functions there, but you need both. And so it's important for that to be the case. While we're talking about this topic, we got another thing I wanted to point out is that in the Old Testament, it was a clear-cut 10%. I believe that's correct.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I
Yeah,
think
I think
that's
that's
what
right.
the Levitical law was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then in the New Testament, I think it gives basically you need a tithe. You need to give. It doesn't have a specific amount.
Yeah.
You can probably read into different ways, but generally speaking, it's you just need to give.
Yeah.
But a principle for me is I give 10%.
Yeah,
To
and
my local church, and that's
yeah,
a good principle to
that's a good
have.
one.
Whatever it is,
Mhm.
wherever you come to, you budget that in
Mhm.
and make that a
Hmm.
habitual, a habit to do because it's honoring to the Lord. It's being obedient.
Mhm.
Make that a budget in it, and don't go down.
Mhm.
You can go up,
Mhm.
but don't go down. If
Yeah.
at all possible. I know different circumstances change, but whatever it is, you want to be consistent at it, and you want to stick with it. Like I said, mine's 10%. Mine is just a traditional thing from the Old Testament, as well as that's what I was taught as a kid. But don't let the 10% hang you up if that's a problem.
Mm.
Point is, you need to be given financially,
Yeah.
tithing whatever amount God's put on your heart to a local church.
Yeah, and I think a good way of understanding that too is remembering the story of the widow's mite.
Yep.
In the
Yep.
Gospels. There were people coming to bring their tithe to the temple, and there were wealthy people who brought. I'm imagining in my head large sacks of gold coins.
Sure.
I mean, that's probably not
Yeah.
accurate, but
I believe it specified that they were dropping large amounts. You could hear it clang down
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
where they were
Yeah,
collecting.
and the idea might, and I mean, this
Make a lot
might
of
be
noise.
wrong, but it also could be right that they were trying to get attention, be like, look how much I'm giving
Yeah, look how
Yeah.
much
to the
I'm giving.
temple. I'm a good religious Jew. This is what I'm doing. And then this humble widow comes in who has nothing except for 2 mites, and I forget the exact monetary amount of what a mite is, but it's ridiculously small.
Teeny tiny.
Yeah,
That's all she had.
It's literally makes no difference to the temple whatsoever whether or not she gives this or not, but she gave it. And Jesus, said that because she gave,
All that she-
others gave out of their abundance, but she gave everything that she had. So it's definitely a hard issue, not an amount issue.
Jesus
Yep.
said that she gave more than all of them.
More than all of them.
Oh, yeah.
Because
So,
she
yeah.
gave everything that she had. Not
Mhm.
she's not extremely wealthy, but she still came.
Yeah.
And still gave.
Yeah, out of the sincerity of her heart. Yeah, definitely. So it is an important. So don't get caught up on the rules about does it have to be 10%. All of that. Like it is a hard issue, and even with the 10% rule, it can become just like a habit that you get into, and you don't think about it. You just kind of do it.
And
Yeah.
another reason why we chose, because there's a lot of things we can talk about as far as our role in the church.
Mhm.
Okay, there's just a lot of particular ways we can approach this. The reason we chose tithing is because it is often the last thing you think about, especially when you're young
Mm-hmm.
and you got a lot of
Oh,
new
boy.
expenses. You got
Mhm.
new bills.
And
you're-
not a lot of money
and
to
not
go
a lot,
with it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
not a lot of money to go with
Yeah.
it. And so it's important for us to talk about this to remind us that it is important
Mhm.
and that we should be doing it. It's a biblical command for the reasons like I mentioned, to provide for the light bills, to provide for new resources for the
Mhm.
church, Bible studies, to pay for the pastor's salary, the
Mhm.
worship leader, those that are on staff. There's a variety of different reasons that these sources go to, and last but certainly not the least is also to help fund missionaries.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I know a lot of our churches do that. I'm sure your church, my
Mhm.
church does it. We fund missionaries
Mhm.
through the
Absolutely.
tithe. There's a percentage, 13. I think ours is 13%,
Mhm.
benevolent that goes to serving missionaries all over the world.
Yeah.
And people come, people come from, a lot of times these missionaries, they have to come back home every so often,
Yeah.
and they go visit local churches
Sure.
and ask
Yeah.
for funds so they can go back. They have to have a certain amount to go back.
Because they're
and to be
full
able-
time in it.
Yeah, they're full
not-
time in it, and this is their only way to pay their bills and to be able to continue what they're doing. Well, if you're not tithing to your church, that's that much less that your church has to be able to help and give.
Yeah, and I will say too. I mean, just to the issue of maybe someone listening and they're like, well, I honestly I live paycheck to paycheck.
Sure.
I do not have anything to give every week. Something me and my wife do. We don't give every week.
Okay.
We give we actually tithe every month.
Gotcha.
And we have it scheduled. It's
Yes.
a regular thing that happens. So don't get caught up on the amount, and don't get caught up on the specific times that you do it, because I understand, like,
there's no rule on that. Like there's no rule like you have to give.
Yeah, there's a lot of grace, and
this amount.
Yeah.
You have to do it every week.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people. I think like my parents. I believe they do it as they get paid. My mom's a teacher.
Right,
She
so
gets
it's
paid
different timings.
She gets paid once a month. So that's how she does it.
Yeah, and I think also there's a lot of trust that goes into this, because I mean, just kind of saying goodbye to the money that you need to provide for your family is that's not a small thing to do, but understanding too that
well, if you budget it in,
if
there
are practical things to do,
as if it were any other thing that you if you like have your budget and you've got, okay, these bills that I gotta pay,
bill, gas budget, food budget,
the kids, lunch money or whatever else you have, budget tithing in with it.
Absolutely.
That's
that's
like,
almost a non-negotiable. You need to do that.
A lot of people don't.
Well, you need to have a budget, but then you need to put tithing.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people take tithing and consider it this extra thing they have to do on top of paying their other bills, but I think it should fall in with it.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet, and that's perspective on this issue. You kind of hinted on it at the beginning, but the perspective here is that as a Christian, we have to we constantly have to refocus our thinking. We're constantly being transformed into a new image, and so if that's the case, we got to understand. Hey, wait a minute. This is not our money to begin with, and that changes everything.
Yeah.
And if it's not our money to begin with, then this is God's money. I'm His. The resources I have around me are His. He's given them to me to use for His glory and for the good of others. And that's the same with my finances, and it goes with the local church. It's important that we have to remind ourselves of that.
Instead of just taking, He gives it to you and allows you to give it back.
Right. It's an act of obedience. It's evidence to other people around you that you care and that you're concerned and that you love the local church.
Yeah. Also, a quick question before we wrap up this segment. Is donating money to a ministry or charity separate from your church, a substitute for tithing to your church?
I think Jordan has a little bit to say about this.
Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm going to say no 45 on this. Seconds. I think that Paul makes it clear that when he talks about tithing for the Christian, that money does go to the church leader, to provide for his basic needs, but also to provide for the needs in the church, ministry needs, things like that. So they're not just going just to one person and stopping there. They are being disseminated. But if God is blessing you, you're not commanded. You honestly are not commanded to donate money to a ministry in the Bible. That's
secondary.
That's secondary, and that's as God blesses you to do that. So that's something you pray about. But tithing is a command, and so that I do see a difference there.
And I agree. By the way, I was just messing with you because I know we talked about this off the radio, and you got a lot to say about it. But I appreciate that. Yeah. I completely agree.
Well, that concludes both this episode and our Emphasis Week. If you want to go back, listen to these podcasts on our website, you can do that.
EngageMagazine.net.
EngageMagazine.net, and there's articles up there that were very, very good for this week. So go back and read those anytime you need to refresh. And we hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was an encouragement, and hope this encourages you to continue to share truth and apply Scripture. We'll see you next week.